And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Good evening, and thank you for remotely attending tonight's City Council meeting. The camera in the council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click the button, you're given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Here.
Councilor Dillabaugh,
Here.
Councilor Fisher,
Here.
Councilor Kennedy. Here. Councilor Powers.
Here.
Councilor Reish.
Here.
Councilor Scamperly.
Here.
Quorum present.
We have one presentation tonight. It will be from City Comptroller Angela Gray regarding the water and sewer funds.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before you are 3 sheets of paper that pertain to the water sewer fund. One is the history of water and sewer rates since 2010 forward, and a proposed rate for 2022 with some additional notes, just talking points at the bottom of that sheet. Looking at the water first, we ended the 2020 year going into 2021 with a fund balance of $1.8 million. So that's what we started our year with. The sewer fund, we had a fund balance going into 2021 of $2.6 million. So that's the current status of both of those fund balances. On average, historically, the water fund has shown a surplus of $200,000 to $250,000 a year over year, with the exception of 2019, because we had some significant write-downs in that fund for that year. Same with the sewer. On average, that shows a surplus of about $400,000. So this is just informational only. We're anticipating needing another capital project in the water fund to a rough estimate of $20 million. So that's just an estimate right there. And we are rounding completion on a $42 million project in the sewer fund. So obviously the capital projects far exceed what we have available in the fund balances, which results in additional debt that we have committed to in the sewer fund, and we should be anticipating in the water fund. So that brings me back to the proposed rates for 2022, and we will be putting a resolution forward and building into the budget for discussion, rate increases of 5% in both the water fund and sewer fund. You can see historically the rates in the water fund have gone from 0% to the highest in 2015 of 15.2% increase. And in the sewer fund, they range from 0 to 16.5 in 2014. So certainly not the highest increase throughout history. In terms of the sewer, we do have the debt coming online. We've been working with EFC, Bond Council, to try to quickly determine what next year's debt obligation would be. So in each one of these scenarios, we are estimating, but it could change, a $600,000 obligation on the new sewer debt. We do have existing debt out there, so I broke those two lines out so you can see. We have a larger bond that will be coming due and all paid off in about 2023. And then there's a smaller bond left on the books that will be fully paid off in 2029. So that's all of the old debt on the line above that. With that being said, kind of looking at how do we establish the sewer rates, we did some modeling of expenses. It certainly doesn't take into account any inflationary adjustments. But historically, we've done the 3%. In scenario 1, the idea is to leave the $2.6 million fund balance kind of intact and just raise the sewer rates to meet the debt obligation. If we do that, we would be anticipating 2 years of 15% increases, and then it kind of peters out for the next 7 to 8 years on that. That's one proposal. That's one way to look at it. Scenario 2 kind of takes a more balanced approach and proposes a 5% increase over the next 5 years, and then tapers that out from 4% to 1% in the last 4 years of this 10-year spread. Again, these are just estimates and kind of models to give the city an idea and city council of what to possibly expect in the next 10 years of the sewer fund. That $1.2 million debt obligation that you'll see in 2023 onward is an estimate at this point. We do not have permanent financing, so that's just an estimate at this point in time. So just in summary, that is why we have proposed or are looking to propose and asking for discussion on a rate increase of 5%, where I think the last couple of years it's traditionally been 3%. So there is an increase there. That debt is not going away. We are bringing in additional revenue from Hubleton once they tie into the system. But that revenue alone, at a conservative estimate, is a little bit over $100,000, certainly not enough to cover a $1.2 million annual debt obligation. The other item that we would ask council to consider and to maybe start talking about is building a capital reserve for the sewer fund, for the water fund, so we can set some of this fund balance aside and restrict it. So in the event that there is a new major project needed, we are deliberately setting money aside every single year to create reserves for the capital improvements.
So would that increase the rate? Let's say if we were to go with scenario 2 and increase it 5% a year for, what was it, 5 years?
5 years.
Would that increase the rate to build a capital project fund? I mean, is that where we would get the money? Let's say if you raised it instead of 5%, 6%, right?
We could, right. I think so. You're asking if we just hypothetically raise it 5% and that's an extra $250,000 of revenue, would we put that in the capital fund or the reserve? That's one way to do it. One way to look at it. The other thing we could do is take some of that existing fund balance and reserve that.
If you look at the top, what we talked about there is, so the fund balance, if you go with the state's recommendation of a couple months of expenditures as your fund balance, we just are using 20%. So 20% of our average revenues is about $750K is what ought to sit in our fund balance. So let's just call that the emergency fund, the fund that we would dip into if something happened. That's what we'd frame in there. So if you look at any given moment, our projected fund balance, let's say we get into 2023, there's 1.7 in there now. So again, in year to year, and as Angela said, knowing that there's a lot of things that these are projections. So some things could go up, some things could go down, but in general, let's say, we would say to you next year in 2023, we would reduce the fund balance to the amount that is needed to keep a healthy fund balance, and the overage, for instance, then would go in the reserve. That's how you'd get that started. Now we are using, and that's this plan here that keeps that rate increase level, we are using fund balance. You'll see that we started in 2022 at 2.3, but we're using about 273,000 of that fund balance to keep the rates down. So we are using the fund balance for really the better part of 4 years, 5 years significantly, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, call it 5 to keep the rates in check. But there still would be enough in the fund balance to, let's say, keep that 750 and to start to build that capital fund a little bit. Certainly not significant, but I think we're at least building the model that we add this capital reserve. So the whole idea here is this 200 to 250 a year surplus that we generate, and hopefully a little bit more in any given year if we save money, that goes in there. And the whole reason we're allowed to generate that kind of surplus is because we're expected at some point in the 20 or 30 year time frame to need $15 or $20 million to do a capital project. The other model that we gave up there, and it's two ways of looking at it. Do we take it immediately? We take it over time. It gets us kind of in the same place. If you look at the other one, we don't use the fund balance to pay down the debt, but we hit a couple back-to-back pretty significant increases. we leave the fund balance fairly heavy. Again, we would also take the fund balance down to say that 750K range. We take that money and create the capital fund from there. But you can see that the real difference in the two models is the stepping up the water rate. Do we step it up right away and get it over with, or do we take it over time? You can see it's going in about that $620 range. It's just going to be a matter of how quick do we get there. Under one model, it takes us a few more years than just getting it over right away. So I think the pros and cons are keeping some of our cash in that balance. On the sewer fund, I would say I'm not quite as concerned because we're doing our large capital project. However, keeping in mind, as we've discussed before, the wastewater treatment plant is a significant component, but it is but one component. We are still, we're chasing the funds for the lift stations, and about 40 miles of sewer line out there. So we do have other capital expenditures coming, but I think probably what was on most of your mind, we tried to focus on was how we generate the funds, but not cause these sharp increases. Because we were able to reduce the projection significantly on the amount of debt payment, these numbers have come down from when you saw them last. I think we were looking at as much as 25 or 30% increase potentially in 1 year based on a model. So I think the numbers have come down. They're a little more palatable, but there still is certainly, there's going to be some increase.
But we haven't decided anything on a capital project at this time for the water plant.
No. And I'm certainly, Councilor Reese, just projecting that it's on the horizon, whether it's 5 million or 10 million or 15 million. I mean, in 2022, we will be significantly, doing all the work. Shane has got the divers out now, doing all the review and the photos of the intake line. So we're starting the preliminary work now. We've got the engineering report that was done for us by EDR. The getting the update on the intake line and the status of the water towers is the last piece. So we'll be coming to you with kind of the analysis recommendations in 2022 about what we think we're going to need to do to the water plant going forward. But just trying to, if we're talking about why are we doing an increase again, there's a large project on the horizon, and we will end up borrowing money. So I'm just trying to identify here some rate increase to start setting some of that money aside and getting ready for what we know. Again, we'll be borrowing the money, but at some point in time, the project's done, just like the sewer, we'll be adding a pretty significant payment to the operating budget. So we'll need more funds. So
Do most businesses, most communities the size of Ogdensburg have this type of debt, like 43 million on one facility and 20 million on another facility? I mean, is there any comparisons or anything? It just seems, they seem like such huge numbers. And I maintain that the sewer project wasn't adequately financed. It should have been a greater percentage of grant money rather than the residents pay for it. And we should still be working in that regard with the Environmental Facilities Corporation. I know, it sounds futile, but that's I still maintain that it just wasn't adequately financed with enough grant money.
I don't disagree with you, John. As a matter of fact, I do agree with you. We should still be pursuing every grant we could possibly get.
Yep.
Obviously, we had to do the project.
No, this is a question of, they should have provided more grant money, and it's not a question of applying for more at this time. It's a question of the bureaucracy providing more grant money versus loan money, so it's less of a burden on the ratepayers. They're the ones that proposed. It was a state authority that proposed it, came in here, created it, and we end up paying for it because they didn't provide enough grant money. And there's only 10,000 people that live here. And the same is true of a $20 million project in the water treatment facility. Another state agency comes in, here's $20 million worth of work for you. I'm just wondering if this is like, if this is other communities face these types of, monumental costs, the size of Ogdensburg, and if we're getting adequate grant funding from the state and the federal government to do this, we should continue working with EFC to get more grant money and get them to provide more grant money.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees, and I think the water analysis that we'll go through will let this council work through a major project like that and see the pitfalls, see the difficulties in getting these things. I mean, there's opportunities out there for all this, but John, to answer your question, yes, all the communities that I talk to have these same issues. The one thing that I think is clear, and again, it's nothing that we've been alone in doing, but I've said it before, and I think it's important. We've identified this capital fund, but I think it's important that this council set a forward tone that you're the board of directors of ultimately 3 different enterprises. One called the city, one called the water, and one called the sewer, and the 2 can't cross pollinate. They just can't. I mean, again, not saying that things weren't done in the past for good reason, because they certainly were. But one of the significant problems here is that we have been moving significant amounts of money out of the water and sewer fund for years to offset our shortfalls in the general fund, and that just can't operate. It's again, if you were the board of directors, same people for 3 different corporations, you wouldn't be able to interchangeably move money from one to the other. State's very clear on how you can do that. It's very short-term borrowing. We will be moving to a automated timekeeping system at the first of the year that will allow us to track, the number of hours that people actually work. I think it will be startling when we get through the first year of that, what our actual charges could be, legitimate charges back to the water and sewer fund versus what we've been taking. So one of the reasons you're allowed to build a capital reserve and keep that kind of money in is because there's an expectation that these projects cost a lot of money. You don't do any short maintenance. The other point, John, I think I would make is this is a classic reason why I agree with you. City government, our size especially, shouldn't be involved in this. We're creating a problem in municipalities our size by the very parochial nature of what we want to do. The state ought to be saying there'll be a sewer plant here, there'll be one here, there'll be one here, there'll be one here, and we're going to fund those instead of every community doing an analysis to decide, are we going to regionalize and consolidate or not? And therefore the state has many more of these to fund now than they ought to if someone just simply said, this is where they're going. We're going to put one right here because this can serve this entire population, et cetera. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that influence this. And I would argue one of the big factors is the state and the federal government just have too many of these to fund. I mean, Lisbon's going through a study now. I don't know that, again, that should even be a choice. If we're talking about the model, we're talking about where the state and the federal government ultimately take the financing. We just can't keep being so parochial. So there's a lot of factors.
So I'm pretty sure that Waddington just had theirs funded completely by New York State through the Ready Project. They use that money.
And that's my point right there. The Environmental Facilities Corporation finances a lot of these, and they provide a lot of grant money. And if you reviewed all the projects they're in, what percentage did they pay for in other communities? What's the percent here? It's a small number. And they only gave us a $10 million grant. It probably should have been a $20 million grant. That's my point.
No. There's no question. And the problem in some of the, and again, remember, all these things come with formulas and demographic build outs. And sometimes, as we see with other things, how are we not an entitlement community the same as the city of Watertown? How not? So I think a lot of times we're at that cusp where the numbers we are, the income levels are just high enough. A very small community like Waddington, for instance, competes better than, there's a zillion factors I think that go into the calculation of all these. So it's hard to do an apples to apples comparison for us with our neighbors because they're largely smaller communities with not as much to draw off of. But one of the things we'll throw into the analysis will be that what are the similarly sized communities that we use for comparison now doing on this level.
There's an awful lot of, if this infrastructure bill gets passed on the federal level, there's an awful lot for water and sewer, which is bad timing for us in the sewer. But, if we can work on the financing for the sewer to get more grant funding, just have them switch it and, wait on, see what's in the infrastructure bill in terms of the water treatment plant.
Absolutely.
Problem is, I think you have to have all the engineering designs and everything first, correct?
We do. So the good news is we've got at least the study. We've got a pretty comprehensive review now, and that's been reformatted for council to be able to look at kind of what is, I went from the attitude of, what's immediate, what's the next throw down the road, and what's the long-term look, so we make a deliberate decision on at what point do we bond for what's right in front of us, knowing the next level of work is going to be cheaper too. And I think, again, this council will get another opportunity to build on the lessons of the sewer plant project, good and bad, to make those same kind of decisions. Because I think we're shaping up, from what I see in the report, I think we're shaping up to a similar kind of assessment. There's going to be $3, $4, $5 million worth of things that we're in the zone today. We ought to be doing them anywhere from now to the next 5 years. But then there's the next jump. And so before we even pay for the first bond that we get, do we really want to be looking at a second bond of work that's going to cost, more money? I mean, I think there's a lot of analysis that will go into that. So we've got a good engineer report. I think the next step after that will be talking to council, using water funds to do just that, to charter out the engineering work to get a bid package
So
prepared.
you mentioned logging hours and things like that.
Yes, sir.
Explain that, please.
So for instance, let's say a DPW worker who may spend 3 hours on the street, 2 hours at the sewer plant, or an hour working in water, or whatever, whatever the breakup is. So just trying to understand specifically, with a high level of accuracy, when we say we're charging a third of a salary to water and a third to sewer and a third to the general fund, what is there? Again, it's just down to now we're competing. And for years, I think, there was some funds in the water and sewer fund. They're not there anymore. So our reliance on that is catching up with us, because it will continue to eat away at these that we're putting in the reserve. So what I want to be able to do is just give council a real accurate picture of what's real. Right now we're ticking at any given point over $1 million of money that's coming out of both funds to offset the general fund. Again, those are funds that if they're not, again, needed in there, well, again, I'm not saying the uses didn't go to good things in the general fund, because they did. But it's also the reason we don't have a capital reserve of 10 or 15 or $20 million sitting here for each of these as well.
So it's my understanding that we did this with Sarah. We logged it. Scott Thornhill was DPW director, and we were trying to get away from that borrowing or taking or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
And so what we did was we specifically logged hours and time of everybody. We had 2 guys going from DPW. In fact, I might be mistaken. I'm just trying to recollect the conversation. Went down to DPW, for example, 2 days a week and clean racks or whatever they call them. And so all that stuff was actually coming out of the general fund for a long time. So when we transferred money, we could justify it, but yet we wanted to become more accurate, because that's what the state wanted us to do. So all of this should already be logged.
So let's say, Councilor, it might have been a snapshot in time then, and I'm saying again, to substantiate this every year going forward, we should be able to show, because you're right, some years we may have had an overage of work. We may have had crisis, we may have had things going on, and we need to pull that money to pay for that time. So the new timekeeping system will allow us to do that. We don't currently keep time like that now. In fact, as indicated in the audit, we don't keep time necessarily at all. We track amount of leave hours taken, et cetera. So this system we need to automate, for one. We bought the system a couple of years ago. We need to get using it, but this will allow us to do that. So again, with that high degree of accuracy, you'll know where you're pulling your money from.
So here's
and are we charging the right rate? Because shouldn't necessarily be just the hourly wage. We've got to look at everything in there, the overhead, et cetera.
in the comptroller's office. So I'm assuming you have a lot of time into this, right?
Yes.
I mean, you probably got 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, 60 days.
Not 60, I couldn't quantify, but there's some time invested
Get a
into
lot of
it,
hours
correct?
logged in here, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we see on the consent agenda, we're paying Gray and Gray $11,000, $12,000 a month, whatever. And that comes out of the general fund.
For this work, when I did this work, I sent a separate bill. We
That's my
track our time. So all my time on this project got directly billed to the sewer project.
Good.
So you'll see the sewer fund paid the firm money, and it was related to this project.
Right. And that's the same thing that we tried to do even in the comptroller's office here.
And I guess, Councilor Scanlon, don't take my intent wrong here. I think the substantiation is, if we're taking less money from here, then that causes us a shortfall in the general fund. So we have to raise the fund somewhere. If we if we take more money from here, that causes less money to be in here. So when we're looking at these projects, again, we don't have the capital reserve. So that's why, again, the robbing Peter to pay Paul to pay John at some point, let's just say Peter's in the middle, John and Rob are robbing them.
Okay, you just have to accurately record.
And we have to, and that way we're substantiating why we're doing an increase in the water fund. The water fund's got to be able to tick on its own. And if it can't tick on its own and we need to be subsidized, it's got to be through another source. It can't be from the general fund and vice versa. And that's kind of just my point is staying on target with that. So, because right now, certainly there will be people who will say, well, yeah, so you're giving me a tax break over there, but you're giving me an increase here. And I mean, you can argue those back and forth. They really should be completely separate universes at the end of the day. They should be completely separate universes that we can substantiate. Always money took in, went here, and this is what it was for. Now, again, we hired the general fund to do plenty of work in the water and sewer area, and we should be making sure that we're compensating that properly. What is the burden rate we should be charging, not just the hourly rate, et cetera. So the data you mentioned, I've not seen it. We've looked. I see where there was some very in-depth analysis done, to lead up to this point. We've really refreshed and updated the numbers with present stuff. And I think we came down with the very similar formulas using that fund balance. I initially, and I'm still not necessarily in favor of using the fund balance, but I do think by way of recommendation, I think keeping the rate around that 5% mark, we still are able to establish that capital fund. We don't deplete the fund balance. We keep it where it is, and we keep those water rates level going forward. I think hitting people with a 15%/16% back-to-back increase would sting and be difficult.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
It would work out better for the city because we can invest the money. However, you're doing it on the backs of one of the poorest communities.
We are coming to the same end and that's probably the thing to know. It's sooner or later, whether it's 3 or 4 years or 5 or 6 years, we're coming to about a $600 a year annual water payment. So it's going up. It's a matter of phasing it in versus hitting it hard.
And the other advantage in doing it in a more gradual fashion is if you have a great year, you're able to, get an efficiency in the sewer fund. I mean, you're not locked in that 15,
right.
16 is permanent in those years.
Yes, once it happens, it's
It's there. I mean, I guess you could always lower your rates, but this kind of gives you a little bit more room to adjust your swing should you have some type of economic
Sure.
change in that
Could
fund.
be 3%, could be 7%.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
So for 22 to 26, I mean, in each comparison or scenario,
Yes.
it's roughly about a 30% call. I mean, just in the scenario. And the other one to build the coffers would be approximately 31%. Am I correct? 31, I'm sorry, 34.
A little more, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, 34. So with the time stamping or the time, you're going to be dealing with different comparables, right? And you're dealing with prior when Dan mentioned that they did it before, they did it with, quite frankly, a sewer system that had a Band-Aid on it, right?
Exactly.
And now we're going to have a new and improved
Agreed.
system up and operating, and hopefully that'll create that much less time. And of course, each subsequent budget coming forward can be adjusted and modified.
Absolutely.
Hopefully. Mhm.
We took a little off last year. I mean, we knew we were a little hot last year. We took a little off. We're looking at this year's budget. Where do we think we can make some adjustments? I think the most significant thing you'll see is places we're doing without the positions will return the money there. I don't think you'll see it. We won't be proposing a drastic decrease because it's a revenue source to the general fund. So it's one more source of revenue that it'd be less coming into the general fund. So again, I think making the adjustment we'll propose will be prudent. And then as we have better data, I really believe the data will come back, but we're taking out significantly more than probably we should, but we won't be able to wipe that out in 1 year. I mean, we're using that revenue source. That's been a pretty constant, the $800,000 range direct payment, and then some salaries we were pulling directly from there. So we're around that $1.1 million mark at any given moment. So I think as we talk about the revenue sources, property tax, sales tax, this one's probably next. I guess probably state aid from other sources, et cetera. And then this is a significant revenue source. This isn't not a small amount of money.
What amazes me is For 5 years, I'm seeing a 24% increase in the sewer rate. And that plant was like ready to fall down. I mean, there was a possibility of massive deaths from chlorine tank. And but what happened to that 24% over 5 years? So over a 5-year period, we're going to increase 34% to pay for a new plant. I mean, something happened in these 5 years. It's very discouraging.
Just from a philosophical government standpoint, just for the heck of it. So back when that plant was built, the federal government had a lot of money, and most of it was grant money. The city probably paid 10%. Now they tax you, they take your federal taxes. They put so much in water and sewer, and they give it to the states to redistribute. So the environmental facilities company is using your tax dollars that you've already paid. They're loaning them back to you so you can pay them back again through fees. That's what's so frustrating. That's what's changed in the last 40 years or 50 years. So people have to pay the fees, and their own tax money is being given back to them, and you got to pay it back again. So
Twice.
Yeah.
Mandated.
well, that's the way they do it now, because they're spending it on other things, and so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We do not have any public hearings tonight. So this brings us to personal appearance. At this time, anyone attending remotely would like to address council, use the raise hand feature.
The first individual is registered as Michael Tooley, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted, sir. It appears your line is open.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Michael Tooley. I live at 214 Hampton Street, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to City Council this evening. First, it was interesting to listen to an intelligent discussion about financial issues facing the water and sewer budgets. I look forward to reading the information shared with you today, further discussion on the topic. Personally, I support a modest increase in rates over a period of years versus a significant one-time spike. I also support the establishment and gradual funding for capital reserve while maintaining an adequate fund balance. Next, I echoed the city manager's comments at the end of your last meeting about the importance of maintaining a 100% equalization rate in property assessments. And I support efforts and use of resources to achieve this. Reassessment of city property does not have to be a scary thing to citizens, provided City Council focuses on maintaining or reducing the property tax levy in the years immediately following reassessment. Let's look at an example. Say when a citywide reassessment takes place, it results in an average increase of 10%. Using the 2021 city tax levy and assessed property values, if the tax levy did not change, the rate drops from $1,787 a thousand to $1,625 a thousand. Taxpayers who have an increase equal to the average would pay the same amount of city property tax. Granted, many will see an increase higher than the average. Some will see an increase less than the average. Many taxpayer believes the reassessment is an air the grievance process is available. But in the end, the total received by the city does not have to change. There's a reallocation of property tax among taxpayers. Some winners, some losers, what I believe would be a fair redistribution of city property tax. Next, some clarification about my comments at your last meeting. I do not object to the use of social media by the city manager to issue information and fact to city residents. What I believe is an ethical weakness is when the city manager's comments become what I believe are political in nature. An example, the day after the September 27th City Council meeting, the city manager issued a statement commenting on the improved position of city finances based on information in the city's December 31, 2020 audited financial statements. The surplus of 2020 of $1.5 million, a fund balance of $4 million certainly deserve mention. However, the city manager goes on to say, Decisive action by the majority of city council to reduce personnel costs, cease duplicative services, and invest in the future is achieving results taxpayers expect. Mayor Skelly and the majority city council are achieving their goals, and he goes on to speak about these goals. In my opinion, these are comments more appropriate for the mayor and/or city council to make, not the city manager on their behalf. As I stated in an earlier meeting, the current city council had no impact on the increase in fund balance in the years 2018, 2019. Prior city council administration did to a degree, but the primary reason for the increase in fund balance was the increase in sales tax revenue in St. Lawrence County, something no governing body in the county had any control over. Another example, after the recent lawsuit was filed against Mayor Skelly by a citizens group, the city manager informed us the city to provide legal defense of the mayor. Information important for the community to have, a responsible statement to make by a city manager. Yet Mr. Jelly goes on to say, this same small group of disruptors remain angry over the staggering 2019 election defeat of then Mayor Wayne Ashley, Councilor David Price, and Councilor Jennifer Stevenson. Since taking office in January 2020, Mayor Jeffrey M. Skelly and the majority city council received a challenge on each and every action taken to save the city from financial ruin and remove the cronyism and mismanagement that reigned during the previous administration. Again, I believe this is political opinion, comment more appropriate from our elected officials, not from the city manager. And a statement such as these that prompts me to say that at times the city manager acts as an eighth member of city council and not as a city manager should. So I close it as I did last meeting. It's city council's job to evaluate the city manager and determine if there are ethical weaknesses that merit improvement. While we will not see this evaluation because it is a personnel item, we will be able to tell if the evaluation results in improvements in these weaknesses. We will also learn in December if city council's evaluation results in payment of a bonus to the city manager in 2021 and the annual benefit included in his contract with the city. Thank you.
Next, Kathy.
The next individual is registered as Margaret Haggerty, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is open.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate the opportunity. Shout out to Matthew specifically for his writing of Chapter 5. I just want it to be known that even after my input at the last meeting, I've still not heard anything from 4 of you on council condemning the cyberbullying I wrote to you about. For the record, it hasn't stopped. Why is this not being dealt with by all of council? It's wrong, disrespectful, intentionally harmful, frustrating, unethical, unprofessional, disturbing, unbecoming, disgusting, unscrupulous, immoral, disparaging, discouraging, untenable, unacceptable, a turnoff to citizens and neighbors alike. We're looking to attract developers and tourist dollars, and this is how they see them to be spent. Last meeting, 4 callers voiced great concern about this behavior. Has anything been done to address this formally? I'm not referring to rebuttals by the perpetrator that can be found on social media and the press. Where are we with the review of the posts and the determination as to whether or not they comply with the city's social media and internet usage policy? These things should be of great and grave concern to the public. They certainly are to me. Thanks for listening to my statement.
I do not see any other hands raised.
And this brings us to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
Next, we have our consent agenda. The claims enumerated in general fund warrant number 18-2021 in the amount of $428,574.77. In library warrant number 18-2021 in the amount of $8,897.54. In capital fund warrant number 18-2021 in the amount of $13,923.37. In the community development fund warrant number 18-2021 in the amount of $120.98. And Community Renewal Fund warrant number 18-2021 in the amount of $0. As audited, be and the same hereby are ordered paid. And so move.
I'll second it.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
No.
approved.
I have a quick question here. There should be debate, or not debate, but question and answers here. I had requested some additional information with the consent agenda last week, 2 weeks ago.
So at the last meeting, yes, you did request the additional pages where it was, we're seeing 1 through 14, but you're only receiving 1 through 4. And right after that meeting, I sent out the entire warrant redone with all pages. It ended up to be a 41-page PDF. And I sent it to all the counselors right after the meeting, and asked in that email that you write back to me and just let me know.
I've been in debate.
In debate, if you want to know. So what you're really seeing on those pages is, so in the event of the one that's 1 through 14, I believe that one deals with payroll. So it gives you all the payroll detail. It gives you the journal entries. So it's just a lot of information. And I wasn't sure that you had wanted that. There was no feedback from any counselor
Some of
on
it I
that.
found interesting. Other stuff I thought was a complete waste of time.
Agreed.
Mike Powers might have more comments on that, but.
So, and then some of the pages that would be attached would be for items that are not approved through the warrant process, the consent agenda, that belong to trust and agency. Those have to get paid out. I think there may be something for no, it's not CD, just other funds that we don't put through, that don't go through the consent agenda. So barring no feedback from anybody, I asked the staff in the comptroller's office to prepare the same until we had direction, because it ends up being a 40 to 50 page document on a light one.
The old way myself, but
Okay.
that's just me. For now, if I want more information.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide any information, but that is the reason why those pages are missing, especially on the one that reads 1 through 14 or 1 through 13. It's a lot of technical accounting on those, which I'm happy to share.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm looking at it now.
Sure.
But going forward, for any additional action going forward, and I'll review this and comment if necessary.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and get the old consent agenda, the one that we looked at. But I had left that night for Albany, so I didn't.
That's okay.
I didn't pull this up, but I'll review it and if necessary. Like I said, I'm not looking to kill the trees here going forward, but I will. I'll take a look at it and comment if necessary, and if not, then.
Yeah, I'm happy to update the format to whatever is needed. I just need some guidance.
Yeah, appreciate it. That's all I got.
Thanks.
I just had one thing as well. It was nice to see, oh, you're all set.
Oh,
I was
thank you.
just in general comments, sorry. It was nice to see that we utilized Reagan's. I know they had sent a letter in stating that they would like to do business with the city, so it was nice, even though there was a small amount, to spread the wealth on that. And I was just like, where's R&L Auto Crushers? And were they just city vehicles we couldn't sell on auction, or?
That's fate. That's what
Code?
the house on Congress Street that we executed a clear out for vehicles, trailers.
Okay, I just had never heard of it, so I was just wondering where it was. If it was, is it? I was just wondering if it was like a local company. Is that what it is? Okay.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
We did, Mayor.
Oh, we did?
Yes, we
Oh, yeah,
did.
Then we did it back. Okay, we have, we do not have any appointments tonight. This brings us to council action. Our only item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
So resolution opting into the sale and adult use of cannabis in accordance with New York State Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. Whereas on March 31st, 2021, New York State legalized adult use cannabis known as marijuana or recreational marijuana by passing the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, MRTA. And whereas the legislation creates a new Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, governed by the Cannabis Control Board to oversee and implement the law collectively referred to as OCM. And whereas municipalities in New York State have until December 31st, 2021 to opt out of allowing adult use cannabis retail dispensaries or on-site consumption licenses. With the passage of a local law or by default under New York State Chapter 92 of the laws of 2021, said municipality will opt in. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ogdensburg City Council, knowing of New York State Chapter 92 Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, elects to opt in, allowing for the legal and regulated sale and adult use of cannabis within the city of Ogdensburg. Be it further resolved that the Ogdensburg City Council requests a recommendation from the Ogdensburg Planning and Development Board on necessary amendments to the city's local laws and regulations governing the time, place, and manner of the operation of licensed adult use cannabis retail dispensaries and/or on-site consumption sites to be presented at the first meeting of the City Council in January 2022.
I'll move that.
One second.
Mayor, if I could. So council, Andrew and I have been discussing this, trying to avoid just being passive and let the time clock kick out. The only requirement was for us to opt out of it. But it felt like if it's city council's intent to allow this to go on, we also need to get the other things that we want to make sure are in place to regulate it. So I felt like doing this in resolution, made the statement, this is what the city and council intends for. And then Andrea and the planning board will get to work on bringing in recommendations for the city code. So there's no requirement to do this. I just felt like this gets the city council making a definitive decision instead of the time clock running out. We default to it, and then we're asking questions.
No, I agree, Steve. We're gonna do it, we should do it properly. Any further discussion? Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
This brings us to old business. We'll begin with City Manager Stephen Geller.
So council, Andrea has prepared some recommendations we have thus far. I just want to ask council, I want to avoid staff appearing to be in the lead of this. My intent here is for staff to do what you want us to do, to look at the sites you want us to look at. I got some feedback from you, some of it just today's, some of it generic. So I want to let Andrea talk through where she feels like we are based on all the feedback we've gotten, things that the staff is bringing to what we think are pros and cons or concerns. But again, I'm not trying to slow drag this, but I'm also intending to have council out in front on the site selection. I don't want this to turn into a city council, warding off the staff who's trying to force how they want this on the community. The staff will do as we're instructed to do. We will provide pros and cons, recommendations, costs, whatever you want us to do to help determine where the best location is. With that being said, obviously Andrea has a wealth of knowledge and a host of ideas, looking at sites, trying to capitalize on use of sites perhaps that may be difficult to see use with, utilities, compatibility, et cetera. So I'd like to let her just present you what she's got, and then again, we'll just continue this ongoing dialogue until we start to get to a place where council is comfortable that we're honing in on the sites that you want to hone in on.
Could we, this was written today, this recommendation. Do we have time to read it?
No, of course, or I think she would just go through, Councilor Reese, just where she is with sites now, and it's, again, up to you as much information as you want to talk about or not. And we're again, this was not intended to be a decision. Again, this is still, in my opinion, very much we're discussing it. We're fleshing out some information. I think she can talk about some of the sites that she's highlighted, the pros, the cons. And then, again, as we ask for your feedback again, hey, take that one off the list, forget that one. Why aren't we adding that one? Just trying to get this discussion going. I think everybody knows, no secret. This is going to be a hot potato. Nobody wants to hang on to this very long. And I'm not kidding anybody when I tell you I don't want to hang on to it very long. So I'm throwing it to you to figure out where we go next. We're likely only going to build one skate park. So likely some residents won't like that. So this is just our way of helping facilitate this discussion.
So this recommendation was prepared today only to facilitate this discussion, Counselor, because we didn't receive, only this afternoon did I actually receive any feedback from members of council. And actually the comments I got were perplexing to me because they didn't actually align with the survey and the images and the maps that were presented to the public. So maybe I'll just start there. In the survey that was done and was posted and available for participation for just about a month, we got over 200 responses, and I think I presented that to council at the last meeting. We were able to integrate, I say we, I did not do it. It was our recreation director, Mackenzie Cole, who put together the survey. And she was able to integrate maps and images to help people select sites. And they also had the ability to throw out their own ideas via written comments. So the three locations are the downtown area, the Greenbelt area, and the Marina District, which were narrowed down by council earlier this fall. And we did away with the center city locations after some discussion about the DRI and potential funding for a skate park in the future if we were successful in that. So with that feedback, staff identified some city-owned properties within those locations. So in the downtown area, again, the map included a site adjacent to the pool, the former location or the current location of 212 Ford Street, formerly Desperados, which is pending demolition, as well as some open parkland area between the Twin Bridges, which is in a New York State right-of-way. Those are all three areas that are presently underutilized and city-owned. All three of those sites have benefits as well as disadvantages. The Greenbelt location only had one site identified, and that is the former volleyball courts. It was site number 4 on Caroline Street. And the Marina District had a few locations, 3 locations specifically. The location of the skate park now in the parking lot adjacent, the sort of surplus parking for the arena. Site number 5 was 30 Main Street, the former cheese plant, and site number 7 is Parkland, which is Trafalgar Park, right adjacent to the dam on the Oswegatchie River. Those are not the only properties that we could look at, but those are city-owned properties within those areas. We did receive 2 comments from counselors that they were interested in the quote-unquote Greenbelt area adjacent to the park. Just to clarify, that does not align with any of the choices that were offered. That is a location in the downtown area. And not a location that is a recommendation of staff to pursue because that requires the relocation of the horseshoe pits. And we don't think that that's really the best option. It does, in terms of square footage, approximate the square footage that was in the current, or previous, I should say, tennis court area, but it would be a very small skate park. And it was staff's sort of interpretation from council that we were looking to maybe do something that was a bit more of a regional draw as opposed to a neighborhood level skate park, which location number 2 adjacent to the park doesn't afford. So staff took those locations and again, before receiving any of the comments that I only received today, made a recommendation to council to pursue site, which I called site number 1 and 2, both in the downtown area, but just off of the Maple City Trail, the open park area that's a bit underutilized, as well as 212 Ford Street, because that will soon be a vacant lot. Both of them will need some work, but they are underutilized city-owned spaces, so they would not be taking any additional parkland off or property off of the tax rolls. They would allow a skate park of equal or greater size in close proximity to existing facilities, which is also something that we heard from council. It does take into consideration the comments that we received. Obviously, we heard lots of people, there's no consensus from the community in terms of where the park should be. For every one comment you get, it should be on Caroline Street, you get someone that says it absolutely shouldn't be on Caroline Street. And every site is the same. We also, at the staff level, think that exploring the option of having it in close proximity to a regional recreation facility, which could be located in the Marina District, is a great idea, but we are not confident that 30 Main Street, if in fact we do pursue the development of an indoor-outdoor space, is large enough to accommodate the addition of a skate park. Being that we are no longer looking at 17 Main Street, and that has an RFP out for it right now, that site also didn't seem to rise to the level of being reviewed further at this time. So taking all of those things into consideration, staff is recommending sites 1 and 2 in your cover memo, both located in the downtown, sort of in the heart of where we are really investing in moving the city forward along our waterfront. But I will reiterate in closing that staff is certainly not desirous of driving the bus on this. We're happy to take direction from council and look at additional sites, but there's no real consensus from the community other than they appear to want it in the downtown area, and as many people want it on the waterfront, that many people want it not on the waterfront.
So I think personally, Area 1 is underutilized right now. We mow a lot of lawns and things. So we're gonna need a couple things here, and we're gonna need water for cleaning the facility. Because, I mean, even when it was down there and I was looking at it, constantly spilling milkshakes and everything else all over the place. We're gonna need bathrooms, So my comment on locating it near a park simply was in the general facility or vicinity of the playground that we have in our Ready project is what I meant by that. Somewhere where a parent could maybe have a child over on the playground that they're watching, as well as a child on the skate park, things like that, which I agreed with Nicole. Nicole brought that up. I thought that was good. And I also felt like there's bathrooms there, there's water available. I don't like the idea of moving the horseshoe pits. And then I don't know if the other side of the pool area is a possible suggestion if there's enough room, which would be the east side. Because there's water there, there's bathrooms there for these kids. And I'm thinking the more of a in the public eye that we can get these kids, probably the less problems we're gonna have. Because I know we had some issues before with language and things. And I don't think it's all those kids by any means, but I think the policing of by themselves and of the park, or if we have city staff watching the park, would be easier to do if they were right there in the public eye, like near the pool or near the green belt or somewhere near a playground. I think parents are going to speak up. I think if we have a staff member, it's going to be easier to police things like that. Just my thoughts. When I've noticed some skate parks, 2 of them recently, one down by Baldwinsville, that's in the middle. They got a playground, a park, the whole 9 yards there. And they got to sign up with the rules and things. And I don't know if they have a person there or not. And then I saw one I was recently in Durham, North Carolina, and they had one that was sizable, probably like your number 1 site here that I do also favor if we have water and bathrooms there, that they seem to police it. They took care of themselves, the kids. There was no, it looked like a nice park, and that was huge with lots of concrete. Obviously, we're not Durham, North Carolina, but if we do get some money from a DRI, I think the waterfront and using space that's underutilized like that probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Just some thoughts. So I'm looking maybe you're just as perplexed, I don't know. Somewhere in the park area or that number one spot for me is pretty good.
I mean, my original thought of locating it next to the pool where the horseshoe pits are was more so that area is already staffed by lifeguards and someone who is running the pool. So there's people within earshot, 12 to 6 or whatever. So it really wouldn't employ having to put additional staffing there, because if a lifeguard or someone overhears or there's something going on, they can get on a radio and they can call the recreation director, or, just kind of gave some more options for supervision. But if it was between these two locations, between 1 and 2, I think 1 would be a better location. But I personally would have just preferred to see it near something that's more family oriented. So different aspects could be utilized together.
I like it to go at the recreational center. I see some opportunities for stretching our property out there. Maybe using existing road, that we won't need on 4 sides of that recreational center. And maybe we can find a spot for it there. You'll have a new facility. You have bathrooms, you have water, you have supervision. Your recreational director will be. And
Could be inside.
So that's my spot.
When do we expect to hear on that DRI?
December.
No, the DRIs are typically announced in the fall. They said that announcements, would come as early as mid-October. So I would expect that they will come anytime. They're typically announced in advance of the actual CFA awards, which are typically in early December. So there should be an announcement this fall, maybe tomorrow.
Well, I can surely see why you want us to make the call.
Oh, I'm not suggesting it's going to be tomorrow. I was just saying it could be tomorrow. Could be anytime.
I'm referring to the skate park, but obviously it poses some problems, with the horseshoe pit. And what of the property not on the east side of the pool, but on the back side of the pool facing the river? I mean, a small shuffle of the horseshoe pits there and the skate park at site number 2. Just a thought. I see the issue, and 1 is, 1 is a vast area. It's a pretty good sizable area there that would accommodate quite a bit. And I'm not looking to, but you've got that pool on towards the Curtis Monument. I just worry about the infrastructure and the water and even to an extent, some security issues tucked away in between the spans of these 2 bridges. You know what I mean?
Then we don't have any money right now. We haven't written a grant. We don't have any money to build this, and we have a grant pending for the downtown revitalization initiative. But I'm inclined to go along with the mayor in terms of, I like it where it is. Maybe it could be configured to take up less of that parking lot. Or if the DRI gets funded over in that area as well, if that helps.
That it? Thank you.
Just as perplexed walking away.
Next, we have our 2021 budget update.
Okay, provided today was the 9-month activity for budget versus actual for the water. So I'll do it in order, the general water and sewer fund. Typically, I mean, if we were just to spend equally throughout the city, we would expect no less than 25% remaining in each department. Scrolling down, I just wanted to point out a couple items that don't really meet this benchmark. Sometimes money gets spent a little bit faster. The first one is Department 3410. The report that I'm looking at is in the top right-hand corner, budget report by department, and that is the Department Fire Protection. We have about 13% of this budget left. Reason being is in 2021, we had some significant time accruals paid out for retired firefighters, and that's actually, if you take that out of the equation, the fire department falls back in line with what we would anticipate for spending. We aren't hoping to receive some reimbursement on some of that money. We'll update you as that moves along from FRB. Going down about 4 lines, street maintenance.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I just butt in while we're on the fire protection?
Yeah, sure.
The SAFER grant, did we apply for that?
Yes.
Was it successful?
Excuse me. No, and I've asked for a detailed explanation. The email that we get basically says, we regret to inform you, et cetera, et cetera. So I haven't got the detailed email of where our application was, what phase it didn't pass. So I hope to have had that before this meeting, but we didn't get it yet. So as soon as I get it, I'll send it to council, and that's something that will be made public. But we were at this point declined. Again, we're afforded the opportunity to ask why and know the parameters, et cetera.
Could you please email us a copy of the request, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Department number 5110, street maintenance. You'll see that there's about 18% left to spend on that. And I just want to let you know that Shane has been working towards spending and successfully has spent the CHIPS money that we will be allocated. So certainly a lot of that was done before year end, and that is what's driving that indicator there. Next department down about 4 more lines, number 5182, street lighting. You'll see that that department is over budget. What happened there is the solar panels had a problem in the winter, then there was a problem with access for fixing them. And so we did not receive the credits that we would have anticipated due to the maintenance issue on those panels. So that will most likely keep going, not most likely, that will be over budget by year end, and we'll be looking.
Who keeps track of that? Whether or not the panels are working?
I don't know, Shane, if you can offer anything on that. Right.
So when it was noticed, contacted where they could get up there to take a look at it.
Really?
So if you read last year along the solar panel world, it was a problem everywhere. So we got the snow that came, melted, formed the crust around it. You can't get up there and smack those like you smack your windshield. So it just became a problem of getting the snow off them. Then we had the intense cold, it froze, it didn't go anywhere for a while. If you looked at solar panels anywhere, you saw covered up solar panels almost every place. It was a problem with the snow. Yeah, everybody had it.
Mine did great.
Yeah.
Snow came right off.
Yeah, if you were in position where the light was hitting, it was reflecting. I think the problem was a lot of the places that got the significant pack like overnight when they weren't warm and it covered down and then it froze. There's a huge farm up near Saranac Lake. I looked at a bunch of times when I drove by a ski, and I was shocked every time I went by that they were covered down, and I wondered then how are we generating power. But now we're gonna I guess lesson learned for us. I mean, the answer to your question is we have to pay closer attention. They're not ours necessarily, but we have to pay attention to it closer because we reap the revenue or non-revenue if they're not working properly. So we'll be monitoring a lot more closely and asking the company to take care of them after small snowfalls and things if we see the snow not coming off.
So the company I've worked with, obviously I'm residential, but I think he does commercial as well. He said that he gets notified if something's wrong and not producing so that he can contact me and hurry up and fix it.
Yeah, we're working on it. I mean, it wasn't something not in our maintenance schedule, nothing we're doing, but as soon as we saw the revenue numbers crunching, we're trying to figure out where it went, and that's the response we got. And it makes sense. I saw it in places, so for us, it's just something we've got to pay attention to and make sure that they've got the appropriate system put in place. Angela and I will be going back to the company and making a case that there were losses. It was their equipment, it's not ours. It wasn't like we failed to do something, but That's where we are at the moment.
You'd have to put Wi-Fi in Lockwood. It's right.
So would the putting Wi-Fi in Lockwood offset?
Well,
costs?
how, we're gonna remember how they maintain the system, is up to them, how they do it. So we're gonna work all it. Again, it's not ours to get up there and maintain. The company that's supposed to do it has to take responsibility for it. We just have to identify now there was a problem. We expect it to be taken care of. And if we can recoup some lost revenue by demonstrating that they, failed to act, we will certainly, make those efforts.
So I did jump over the revenue line. I probably should have started there, so I apologize. But as you can see, we have about 27, the very top line of the report, 27% of our revenue left to collect. Some of the numbers that I know of our interest is where we're at with sales tax. So we're 13.7% ahead on sales tax at the end of September. And we have collected 3.5 million, and I just rounded that number up. If we base the collections on the last 3 months of last year, we'll probably expect to see, it's hard, but maybe close to $1 million more in the next quarter of sales tax. So that would put us around over 4 million for the year. Other monies that we have to come in this is the state aid money. We've received some of that. We're expecting another 1.6 million, I believe, on that number. And then also we're anticipating and will receive CHIPS money in excess of 750,000. Those three items will come into the budget in the last quarter, which will, of that $4 million that we haven't collected, that totals about 3.3 million. So
How do we do on real property?
we're still collecting on real property. When we record the revenue, we record it in full. So the real property was recorded at what the levy was. And then we record a receivable. And I didn't prepare ahead of time of how much we've collected, but I can certainly provide that. So.
Okay, am I reading right under the law? We've spent $151,155 on legal fees. Is that where that?
That is correct, yes.
Wow.
So any questions? The other report that you have is the budget by expense code and the top right bold, and it's the same information, just diced a different way. It divides the report into major expense categories. So the first one being personal services. We've citywide in the general fund spent, we have about 27% of all those department salaries left to spend. We've exhausted most of our equipment and capital outlay budget. There's 9% left in that area. And we have about half of our contractual expenses that we budgeted for to spend. Employee benefits, one of the next largest categories on page 2 of that report. We have 25% of our budget remaining on that category as well. Overall, the city of Ogdensburg has spent all but 32% of their appropriations for the year headed into the third quarter. So any questions on that? Okay. Oh, water sewer, just real quick, they're happening as expected. The water fund has seen a 3% increase in revenue year over year, which we raised the rates 3%, so that makes sense. The sewer fund, the revenue there is holding pretty steady. One of the big contributors to that is the revenue from the psych center is down in 2021 because I believe in 2020 they were obviously using more water, but in conversation with Shane, they had a leak. So certainly fixing that, we lose a little bit of revenue that way. But aside from that, there's no surprises in those two funds.
Headed into the fourth quarter.
Excuse me?
Headed into the fourth quarter.
Headed into the fourth, yes. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Now we have our comprehensive development plan update.
Council, by way of update, I have provided the documents received from the county on their official comments, and then I would call them their unofficial comments or binding or non-binding comments. So I'm working through these two. There are two what I call binding complements, the implementation of a prioritization matrix and a map or series of maps that show where the areas of interest are to be located. So they're good suggestions, even in their non-binding comments. There's a lot of good suggestions, so I'll be integrating those as appropriate. To not do the binding recommendations, we would have to make a deliberate decision by supermajority to override those. I don't think that's prudent. I think the recommendations they've made are straightforward and help improve our plan. So I will get that done and hopefully have everything to council by the next meeting to review the final version. County's comments, I think, again, I've provided these documents. The comments were good, so we'll keep moving forward.
And our next is St. Lawrence Psychiatric Center, surplus property.
Had a meeting last week, two of them. One on Monday with all the agency players, Department of Corrections, Office of General Services, and Office of Mental Health. I feel like the meeting was really productive. What I'll have to report next may not sound the most productive, but what I took away from the meeting was there are individuals at each agency that are committed to doing this. I feel much more confident now that there is no desire by any of the agencies to hang on to surplus property. It's just a lot of bureaucracy. That's all there is to it. The legislation on the surface, while it paves the way, listening to some of their concerns, it adds some restrictiveness and some things that they have to do. They can't just arbitrarily say they're not going to do. So I do feel like the points of contact, and I owe all of you an email who those are. Councilor Powers was on the second call, which I'll talk about in a second. So from the discussion, we kind of started from the beginning. Why are we here? And I ultimately answered, very simply, because the city of Ogdensburg needs these properties back on the tax rolls, and the state of New York is not executing with any level of efficiency or swiftness to do that. So the individuals there were concerned, why is the city taking this on? Why are we not aggressively trying to market and sell these properties with the city's assistance and within the city's current planning and development processes, codes, and areas? So there's a meeting scheduled for Thursday of this week where we're going to discuss that. Just quickly, there was a scheduling mix-up. I think the agencies were scheduling one direction, Senator Ritchie's office was scheduling another, and somehow the two didn't come together. So I had the second meeting with Senator Ritchie's staff. Councilor Powers was on the call. It was just us and Senator Ritchie's staff. But I think she was, again, she's just trying to facilitate communication. So I think she was satisfied that we're doing that. I told her we would keep her apprised of the situation. So back to where the meeting resulted, I really would like to run to ground with the agencies. Why not let the state agencies do the marketing, do the selling? Why, they kept asking us, what is our intended use for the property? And I said, our intended use is to sell it. We don't have a city desire to use this. So Docs wants to be able to sign off on these, but they need to know what the use is going to be. And they want to be able to at least partially sign off, but we don't have a use. And so the discussion went back and forth about, can Docs provide us a list of things that they don't want to go there? And the assistant commissioner said, well, I can give you a handful of things that are most likely obvious. It's not about so much the use, it's more about, what's going to be involved, what's going to be the access, what's going to be the traffic, just all the questions that they're required by that legislation to be able to answer. So again, nobody was obstructing this process. I didn't feel like at all. I feel like there was genuine suggestion and recommendation from the Office of General Services that, hey, why this is what we do. Why aren't we marketing these properties on behalf of the state? If the city has some good marketing efforts going on, I explained what we were doing right now with the brownfield properties and the products that have been developed and the success we're having reaching out to developers. So there may be a way here for us to reach the goal that we want without having to be what I think we're all trying not to do, which is getting in the development business, taking on properties and then trying to figure out uses. So I won't let this linger. I won't let this become another kick the can down the road, but I would like to determine, is there a way that we can reach our goal without having to take possession of them? We're talking about the value of the property and what is it worth versus, compared to the amount of grant money we've been awarded to buy it. And we still will have to, search for additional grant funds or use our own money to clean the property up, assume all that liability, responsibility, and financial expense, and will we be able to recoup it? So I just would ask for council's a little bit of leeway and patience on this. I feel like the right players at the right levels of the state agencies are on the phone, being able to communicate about this. And I felt like their proactive suggestion was, again, why aren't we marketing it instead of you having to do it? I felt like was at least indicative of them recognizing that, again, why are we having to do this? So I know what the obvious answer is, and I explained it to them. The state has not done what they should do. And the city's intent is not simply on the 4 parcels that were in the original task force by the senator. We want to see any and all property on the psychiatric center grounds that's not being used by the state government be marketed and back on the tax roll. So I feel like everybody was understanding of that.
We've already done appraisals based on, this is, I don't know how many years in the works. That would have been a good question 6-7 years ago. But for some reason, someone decided that the easiest way was government to government, and there was grant money provided for that. And that may still be the best way to go, rather than rely on, someone from Albany or New York taking care of it without any local knowledge of the market and that.
No, I don't disagree, Councilor Reach. I just also think we have a lot of tasks, a lot of challenges. Again, as I told the gentleman, the city currently, we have quite a roster of our own property, we're currently trying to market. So while I'm interested in, in the end goal of getting these back on the tax roll and getting them in the hands of the private sector for good use, generate sales tax, property tax, et cetera, certainly if they're willing to help while we've got some pretty big projects going on, great. Again, I won't let it linger. I feel like I've got a good handle on which of the agencies now are in our corner. Office of Mental Health, and it may be a shift. It may be just a different period of time. The individual that is responsible for facilities there, these are just more facilities he has to try to maintain, take care of, provide security over, et cetera. He wants the inventory off his to-do list. He's not budgeted for it. He's not given funds to take care of these things. So when they come up, they're issues for them. So maybe it's just a different philosophy now in a different period of time. So let's just see where it goes. And again, we won't be any farther behind. And the senator's staff is fully engaged in keeping this moving. We certainly appreciate that.
In regard to the meetings, I wasn't able to attend and sent in a suggestion that the state budget for the $20,000 inventory and analysis update for the historic buildings to determine which ones need to be torn down and can't be restored and which ones should be salvaged. And another state agency, the Office of Historic Preservation, actually needs that in order to make a determination on the listing in the national and state register. So I would hope that Senator Ritchie's office is working with OMH to actually appropriate that and get that done during 2022. And it's encouraging that they put the fence up, based on our concerns about a blight in our community and public safety, but it really doesn't address the issue. So they need to go farther with that in terms of the inventory and analysis, and hopefully some additional funding to stabilize those buildings, whether it's an OGS money or OMH funding.
Yes, sir.
Ultimately, it all boils down to OGS. They have the authority to sell the property, the surplus property. OGS is and you mentioned it, there's a great deal of bureaucracy here.
Yes,
and you've got 3 different entities here. You've got the Office of General Services, DOCS, and OMH. One may be playing nicely. I haven't gotten the names yet of the commissioners that you're speaking with. I have great relationships with all entities. Yeah. And the governor just announced Jeanette Moy as the new director of OGS. So, going forward, OGS has the ultimate say. But there's a great deal of, Patty Ritchie's, 10 years ago when she first ran for Senate. I mean, I think they offered it up for $1. I can't recall exactly the price. I don't know if Andrea might remember. She's probably still in college, but all that aside. Going forward, I think, that's how long ago it was. And this is a heavy lift. And like I said, I have a great relationship with these people and I'm happy to help the senator and help our cause going forward. So if you can get me those names.
Yep.
And we might be able to help schedule a meeting. You mentioned getting the governor up here at some point.
Absolutely.
It's the way to go about it.
No doubt.
Does anyone else have any old business?
Yes, actually, I do. Recognizing that bit of a conundrum with the skate park currently. Was there any progress naming the horseshoe pits, regardless of where they may or stay, after Zeke Montroy? I know it was brought up here. It's a consideration. Curious to know what the council's thoughts are on that. Going forward, many of you know he was instrumental in putting them there and establishing the league and moving forward.
Yeah, the city historian did a great job for us, and it'll be for the next review for the next meeting.
And double down on Nicole's comment, an email regarding the SAFER grant. Can you share that with the council and any explanation you get going forward?
Yes.
And this brings us to new business. Does anyone have any new business?
I got some new business. I asked for some information several weeks ago regarding police and doing a comparison. We had a conversation right here in this council meeting, and the majority of council tried to state that Messina has 12 officers or 12 policemen on staff. That's factually incorrect. They have 20 and they're going to add more because they can't fight crime. So I asked for some information. The information I asked for was a comparison between Ogdensburg and the other city, towns and villages nearby us, as well as how many calls per officer each are taking. Stressing my concern, I know we've been working down around 13, 14 officers. I'm worried about their mental health and what have you. Obviously, we had a suicide about a year ago, things like that. And all over, I mean, we've got these other issues here on Messenger. So I'd like the answer, please. Right now, I want to know an answer. Yeah, I do. Because you know what? You birds got an awful lot of time to do a lot of talking on Facebook. Chirping, chirping, chirping. And I'm getting pretty sick and tired of it. It's not your job to get involved in an election. And that's exactly what you're doing. I thought.
Mike, shut him down.
You shut yours too. I'm telling you right now. Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right. I'll calm down.
Thank you.
Calm down. New business.
Mayor, I'd like to answer just, excuse me. So, yes, Council, you've asked for the information and you'll get the information.
So I got new business and this is a resolution, okay? Because it seems like you got an awful lot of time to chirp on Facebook rather than to my face.
I don't really chirp, Councilor. I don't really chirp. I speak about as loud and clear as it gets. I speak about as loud and clear as it gets. You can look at me if you want to address me. I speak as loud and clear as it gets.
Yeah. Well,
And anytime that you want to show up other than yourself on social media or chirping in here in my office, as you've promised me on several occasions you were going to do, you've never done it.
okay.
You don't show up.
We're going to have a discussion.
Perfect.
Comments on Facebook.
Absolutely. Let's bring it.
Before we get there, okay? I've got a resolution here. I know it's going to get defeated, but I'm going to make a point. I'm going to make a point for the citizens of Ogdensburg that are sick and tired of it. Okay, I thought Margaret was very nice today in her comments because I've heard an awful lot worse comments, okay? A resolution to conduct a C-14 investigation on City Manager Stephen Jelly regarding his comments on social media and the city's website as they pertain to the City of Ogdensburg Municipal Code. Whereas City Manager Stephen Jelly has made derogatory comments towards citizens on Facebook, and whereas many citizens called in to complain at the October 12, 2021 council meeting about the city manager's comments exhibiting unprofessional and unethical conduct towards the citizens of Ogdensburg and city councilors, including bullying and name calling. And whereas the International City County Management Association, the leading organization of local government professionals dedicated to creating and sustaining thriving communities throughout the world, ICMA, has a code of ethics requiring city managers to refrain from all political activities which undermine public confidence in professional administrators and refrain from participating in election of the members of the employing legislative body. And whereas City Manager Stephen Jelly has persistently exhibited comments on Facebook to undermine public confidence in professional administration, professional administrators, and maybe deliberately trying to sway an election by manipulating historical facts and or misrepresenting facts in a questionable manner pertaining to past administration and current professional administrators for his own personal gain. And whereas a city manager, Stephen Jelly, may be in violation of the Ogdensburg City Charter, Chapter AR 87 should be in there, okay? Missed it. Administrative regulations. Oh, there it is right there. Actually, AR Administrative Regulations, Article 14, Internet Technology Policies suggested by the City of Ogdensburg and City Councilors Powers, Kennedy, Scamperly, while the rest of the City Council has remained silent on the issue, as pointed out by another caller tonight. Specifically, sections A, purpose 1, 2, which define the purpose of the City of Ogdensburg's connection to the internet as to facilitate the official work of the city. C, principles of acceptable use. 1, subsection D. Users shall not use or develop programs that harass other users. Subsection D, acceptable use. Subsection 1D, to transmitting threatening, obscene, or harassing materials or correspondence. Subsection H, for solicitation for religious or political causes. Subsection K, for activities meant to foster personal gain. And E, Web 2 and social networking. 1, social networking raise a number of security and reputational risks. Subsection D, users should communicate in a professional manner. F, personal communications. Users who publish personal or professional opinions must not invoke their city title or make any representation on behalf of the City of Ogdensburg. Be it resolved, Ogdensburg City Council will enact a C-14 investigation into Mr. Jelly's actions on Facebook as city manager by appointing a citizens committee along with the city attorney to investigate for the purposes of discovering and deciding whether the city manager's comments and actions on Facebook, the City of Ogdensburg's official webpage, and press releases represent workplace violence, violations of the Ogdensburg City Charter specifically mentioned in this resolution, and attacks upon citizens in Ogdensburg and sitting city councilors. And be it further resolved, all city computers and devices in the city manager's possession and access should be seized by staff immediately and secured from the city manager from having access and be turned over to the investigating committee. And be it further resolved, the city manager should be placed on administrative leave while council decides a process for empowering an investigating committee of interested citizens, and that committee completes their work. And be it further resolved, if found to be overstepping the scope of his professional job perimeters on any or all the violations, then city council should take appropriate action. I so move.
Second.
Sick of it. I'm sick of it.
Well, unfortunately, it's really not the appropriate place. I mean, it's clearly a personnel matter, and each of you have the ability to call for executive session to discuss a personnel matter. I mean, I realize there's an election and, you know, you have a lot to say and you want to say it publicly, but I don't think this is the appropriate format. He's an employee.
I don't think Facebook is the appropriate format.
To you?
It's an employee.
Your Honor.
It's the way you conduct a C-14 investigation. Do it
That's
all.
how the charter calls for.
That's what the charter.
Your Honor, can I have the floor?
Yes, Steve.
I'd like to make a motion to table this resolution.
On what basis?
On the basis I just made the motion.
I didn't need an ignorant opinion. I just asked a question.
I
It
wasn't
hasn't been
ignorant.
reviewed. There's a lot of allegations. There's maze in here. There's not definitive things. It hasn't been reviewed by the attorney.
So do you recommend that we give this to the city attorney so we can get some response back on it? Would you make it for people going forward to do that?
I just made the motion to table it, and it was seconded. Take a vote, Your Honor.
Nobody seconded it.
I'm having discussion. I'm just saying, is there anybody against not letting this have us access to the city attorney so we can have this looked at?
I don't understand why. Well,
There's a lot of things you do that I don't understand.
I understand why we can't have the investigation.
Counselor Dillabaugh seconded the motion to table.
Kathy, would you call the roll?
So this is a roll call to table. Counselor Dillabaugh,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
No.
Counselor Powers,
No.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
No, you cowards.
Mayor Skelly.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
I beg your
Then
pardon.
have the investigation. Then have the investigation.
The point is, this is a personnel matter. It's not a witch hunt or a vendetta. If you want to talk about
And
it.
get it off Facebook and keep it proper. It's in the charter. Unethical bullcrap behavior. They're in the charter. Are doing it.
If you want to talk about it.
Completely wrong. Completely.
Damn.
Mike, remove him.
You haven't had a drop, Bill. You can put on your little show here.
Damn.
I'm not drunk, I'm PO is what I am. Because the cowards that hide behind the computer instead of bringing it right here.
Fact of the matter is, come on, let's be honest. Is it appropriate action? Is it appropriate behavior and a professional standard? Is it?
I really don't think you two are. Really, with your
Oh, please,
secret
Mike.
sites and you've done on there? Come on, you are the coward.
I don't even engage. I barely engage in Facebook.
Dan.
Injuries in
Listen,
Ohio.
why don't you go home and so.
You guys are pathetic, quite frankly.
That's his job.
All right, let's move on.
Mayor Skelly, I need your vote.
All right, the vote was to table.
The roll call was to
Yeah.
table.
I vote yes.
Of course.
Could I
Tabled.
request that we revisit this at our next meeting and request that the city attorney is present for an executive session?
You can request it all you want.
Right,
We've been requesting the city attorney.
I know, I'm
for the
asking,
last 2 years and they don't see, he
Can-
won't come.
can we get
Probably doesn't even get the invite.
on the public record of that, if it's okay for us to have?
Normally, when you have an executive session, it's the reason why you have an executive session. is
Correct.
If you're not talking about it publicly.
I'm asking, I'm
What's not being
I'm
talked about
formally
publicly?
requesting that the city attorney is present at our next meeting. I put it in emails and I get no responses and I get crickets. So I'm asking in the public forum.
Right here.
Right. Okay, I'm requesting, it takes 4 votes to have the city manager attend. I'm requesting that he is at our next
We
meeting.
are having an executive.
So that we discuss it. Okay.
I'd like to request an investigation. How do we have 24% increases in the sewer rate over 5 years? And now with 34%, we can pay for a new plant. I'd like an investigation to what's been going on in the past years. The general fund depleted.
Call for it.
Fund depleted.
Go for it.
Water fund depleted. I
Go
mean,
for it.
this is on the radar.
Write yourself up a resolution and bring it to the table.
A lot of your comments that city council is do nothing for years. I can't wait.
Okay, so now we have items for discussion, and the first is the American Rescue Plan.
Nobody else had any new business?
Uh,
Too exciting for everybody?
Rest of us are sober. I thought out of control.
Don't you're out of line. Me and drinking, you make that count.
Okay. All right. The American Rescue Plan.
It's not the first time he's made those accusations to people, Dan.
Yeah.
It's not the first time you've been in this position.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to invite the public. Actually, I'd like to invite a police officer to come and give me a breathalyzer right now, because I haven't had a smitten of alcohol in several days.
Let's move on.
For the record. So call up the cop, please. And let's prove him lying, deceitful one more time. This time in open forum, not just on Facebook. Well, that's what you're doing. You're lying. You know I haven't been drinking.
You're out of order, making that accusation.
Exactly.
Every time
You're completely out of order. Maybe you're drunk, Mike.
yeah, okay.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm really drunk, that's why I'm acting.
Well, that's.
All
right.
Order, Mike.
Okay.
We just want to give council a quick update on the monies that we've received. Again, it's about $500,000 trying to get out into the community. We went through phase one where we polled the community, sent out a bunch of solicitations, received back the list that we provided during the last council meeting. There's really been no feedback from any counselor as to how we'd like to best use those funds, or if they had any other not-for-profits or small businesses that may be interested. We're very open to communication on this topic. We did forge ahead with step 2, and for everybody that responded, we sent them an application that inquires what other grant monies they have received and the amount of what they've received, in hopes of taking that list of about 50 people and parsing it down to get some money out into the community. So it will be presented, the summary of all that, at the next regular council meeting, November 8th. The responses are due back November 4th, and hopefully we'll be able to send some money out into the community. One of the big decision factors I think should be considered is the not-for-profits and small businesses that have already received funding through the various COVID efforts, federal government, state government, they're everywhere. And so the survey that has been sent out asks for very specific information on that and asks the respondent to illustrate their losses due to COVID. So we'll summarize that and present it at the November 8th meeting. But if you have any comments, feedback, I would welcome that.
I think, as I mentioned last time, in the comprehensive plan that you put out, or the plan that you showed us last council meeting, there's some of them are pretty lofty.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, right. But obviously going forward, finding out what entities may have received other funding would surely help in some of the decision making going forward. And I look forward to seeing that and moving that forward. So
Great. We should have that for you on the 8th. Thank you.
Keep looking at it for some reason.
That's all right. The 2022 budget plan.
Council, the plan will be to present the 2022 proposed budget on Monday, the 1st of November. The mayor's called for a special meeting solely for that purpose. The comptroller and I will give a fairly detailed presentation on the state of city finances just prior to presenting you with the budget document and asking for your consideration to accept it. Post that, we'll schedule work sessions at council's discretion, similar format to we used last year, likely double up one of the small entities with one of the larger departments so we can move through those in 2 or 3 work sessions.
Would it be possible if the work sessions done during Tuesdays and Thursdays when City Hall is open? Because I know people can attend planning board meetings. Would that be something we could look into?
Oh, when you say people can attend planning board meetings, Councilor, what are you speaking of?
Well, there was a sign on the door that about planning board meetings are open to the public. So I was just wondering if
These people don't want people attending meetings, Nicole. They're afraid. Right?
we've always had
Always have, yes.
good attendance in meetings. And I know a lot of the groups, when they present, they bring other members of their boards, and sometimes several people speak in regards to that. So I was just wondering, is that a practice we're going to continue?
So we'll be inviting the representatives, excuse me, for instance, of the rescue squad or any of the other agencies.
I know generally when the library comes, there's like 8 to 10 of them that come.
We won't be allowing that. I mean, we'll ask for them to send the representatives that are appropriate, 1 or 2. If for some reason somebody has a request for multiple people that goes beyond 1 or 2, we can certainly look at cycling them in and out.
Does anyone have any items for discussion?
Yes. So again, number one, I don't think we should be barring people from attending the city venue, as I keep saying. It's nonsense, okay? And another thing, these Facebook comments, okay, you guys have been saying that this contracts are gonna bankrupt the city and all the, tell me how the contracts bankrupt the city. You know, you said that we've been a do-nothing council, okay? What's your reaction to that?
Well,
Isn't the purpose of a council meeting to have a council meeting and you go to a political debate to debate the issues?
Normally.
The raises in the 6-7 year contracts, it's very disappointing that the comptroller nor the city manager nor anyone on council asked what the cost would be. The cost is $1.1 million in pay increases and $1.6 million total with benefits.
That's over the course of the whole area, right?
Yeah.
And so did you ask about savings? Because we were presented last spring with a whole presentation on this. And the savings in the first 2 years more than offsets the entire pay raises for the whole duration of all city employee contracts. And that's something you guys are shooting out about. See, you like to just mention one little fact, but you don't like to mention all the facts. Okay, so let me tell you something here. This should probably answer a lot of your questions about what council has done as a do-nothing council, okay? 2014, we had a $2.76 billion fund balance, okay? Almost as much as it was in 2019 at the end of the year. But anyways, 2015, the city got hit with what we called the perfect storm back then, this financial hit. It was crazy, sucked, all right? Basically, we ended up using about $1.5 million of it, okay? More than that, $900,000 we had to pay to the school district in unpaid taxes, $800,000 in other budgeted shortfalls and things, and I'll take partial responsibility for that, no doubt. We took a hit. As a matter of fact, we started out with a fund balance, okay, at the end of 2016 of $108,000. Nothing, peanuts. Oh my God, we were crushed, okay? The Moody's rating went down, the tax cap that we're facing was only 0.68%. I mean, almost unbelievable odds. How are we gonna pull out of this, you know? But you know what, rather than sit around and do nothing, I think it was August the 16th, this council got together and we had a work session. And we developed a plan of attack, 5-year plan of attack. We didn't get to complete it because it was interrupted here in 2020. Okay, but we wanted to develop a plan of attack to transform the city operations while maintaining levels of services. Okay, that's a very tricky thing to do. Okay, you may not know that because you just cut services. Okay, beginning with the 2017 budget and increased revenues. Okay, so our goals at this meeting were to develop a 5-year plan, predict sales tax revenue a little bit lower, reorganize our water, sewer, general funds, kind of some of the stuff we talked about tonight, all right, that this city manager's doing. Counter expected wage increases, healthcare costs, decreases in positions and equipment purchases, work with the unions and city staff, you see, to get more savings, okay? Talked about a 12-hour shift and trying to get healthcare contributions, which was almost nil at the time, okay? We tried to get an increase in pilot agreements from tax exempt property. We sold more property. We wanted to sell more property. I'm talking about our goals here. Continue trying to find a healthcare consortium. The city was self-insured at the time. It was huge, costly. A catastrophic event would cost the city $1 million like that. No stop loss. Okay. Obviously, we're continuing our brownfields cleanup and looking for a developer. And the thing is, every department head, every department, every union, every member of the city was asked to join us in this call to save the city. Okay, a lot different than the leadership today. Okay, and they did. We worked together. Okay, and here was our accomplishments between 2016 and 19. And somebody ought to dictate this so that it goes on the Facebook site or something. But because I'm not going on Facebook to discuss this. Okay, and you guys were all presented this last spring, by the way. Okay, We budgeted for lower revenues to increase the fund balance. We sold 50 properties, put them back on the tax roll. We created the land bank program. Now, obviously, council didn't do this alone. You got wonderful people like Andrea working here and everybody else. Okay. We got state aid to rehab properties, remove property from our tax obligations, which was some of the stuff that just about knocked us out back in 15 and 16. And obviously, we're still working on that as a council, trying to remove those tax obligations. Okay. We increased the number of streets and lanes to get more AIM, CHIPS money, state grants. We reduced the general fund expenses, okay, to add millions to the general fund. In 2019 alone, the city created efficiencies to save $503,000, which was 3.6% lower in our expenses. The library in Remington were a contention for years at these budget hearings, that people were actually allowed to attend. You know, people were allowed to attend these meetings, unlike today, where you guys don't want anybody attending.
We didn't have
Okay.
an epidemic.
2014, with that, those two entities cost the city over $1 million. We rolled it back. By 2019, it was 380,000. Okay, we've done our diligence. We began the process of lowering our tax anticipatory notes and bans, decreasing the city's debt, okay, by $2,361,524. About 25% of our debt was eliminated by 2019. That's what this did nothing council did, all right, with the city, okay? We increased the city's fund balance by $2.5 million, more than that, okay? Remember, it was 108,000, nothing in 2016. By 2019, when you guys rolled into office, you keep saying that we're bankrupt. We had a $2.6 million fund balance. We reorganized the water and sewer funds, okay, to illustrate a $0 transfer by 2019. $0. Keep going back and looking at 2016, this and that. Even Mr. Jolly tonight said, he said, you know, sometimes he saw it as a necessary evil. Absolutely, okay? And again, we tried to account for it in much the same way that we're doing now. Let's see, 2019, we wrote off 969,000 in property tax write-offs, exceeding the 750,000 audit requirement. We reduced staff by 11 positions between 16 and 19 while maintaining services, okay? A new fire department contract, okay? You guys keep bringing up these contracts to reduce by 4 members, okay? You're probably, by your numbers alone, that's gonna be more than a $520,000 savings per year, okay? Just in that contract, okay? So that would mean after 2 years, you more than paid for all the increases in pay. 2018, we began a new health insurance plan. From the time I got on council and Mike was on there with me, we were trying to get ourselves away from being self-insured to getting ourselves some sort of health insurance plan. And we finally did, okay? Instead of being self-insured, we saved with these new contracts, before the contracts, 417,000 in 2019 compared to 2016. And 2020 was online for another almost 500,000. Again, just in healthcare, we're more than paying for the cost of pay increases. Some of these people that work for the fire department actually brought home less money than they were doing before the contracts. How come you don't talk about that on Facebook? You know, because you're trying, all right, okay. Yeah. Earnings from investments went from $808 in 2015 to $121,000 in 2019, and it built. Okay, 2019 was expecting a 28% increase in health insurance costs, okay, before we got these contracts signed. We created a committee, again, actually working with people, unions, other people involved, the healthcare consortium, and we sat down before we had negotiations and we tried to come up with a detailed plan that would save the city money. Okay, the new contracts had higher deductibles, higher out-of-pocket costs for employees, increased employee premiums and co-pays, higher buyouts to get people off the plan. Again, savings, 430 grand in 2020. Medicare retirees on a new plan at 1/3 the cost from before. Provided the city with stop loss coverage for catastrophic claims. Okay, something we never had before that would do in our budget in a heartbeat. These were the things we were facing, okay? Again, covers the cost of all those raises. The police department, our goals were to reduce overtime, create efficiency, possibly even reduce positions, okay? Somebody called me a flip-flopper on this today. I'm not a flip-flopper. Ask any police officer. I've always wanted to reduce the number of positions, but something reasonable. And to do that is with a 12-hour shift, okay? And be way down where we are now, but after really thoroughly examining all players, inviting everybody to the table, I knew I was wrong to fight crime effectively. And I think 24, 25 men would have been a nice first step, but you couldn't do it without the 12-hour shift. And recently in an email, you told the police department, open up your contracts or else we're taking away that 12-hour shift. All right, come on. I mean, really? Come on. No, not yet. I'm not done yet. So I got the floor, okay? Where are we? Okay, 2019, they came up with a plan. They offered it to us to move to a 12-hour shift to do just that. Okay, it was in the very early stages when we lose 10 positions. Okay, obviously as you guys came along, the new contract for the OVPA is going to increase revenues and reduce overtime to the general fund. Our lease program was added to save the city over $2 million in 10 years. We became a green city thanks to Andrea Smith and her department. Implemented the solar farms, LED lights, things like that around the city. We revised and modernized the city code for economic development, which is still in the works. I could go on, but don't call me a do-nothing council and your other name-calling nonsense, okay? Want me to get into some argument on a stupid website, on social media, that none of you people should be on conducting city business. Okay? Go ahead and say what you got to say, Mike.
So
I'll give you the floor.
thank you.
Let's move on.
Yeah, back to 2016 again.
Can we move on to council?
We should talk about that, Mike.
Yeah, let's save the debate till Friday.
Well, let me answer these things real quick, please. So in 2016, you had like $265,000 according to Sarah Purdy in your budget. And your sewer fund, she puts it, your sewer plant facility was deplorable. The water plant was deplorable. So then you go to 2017 and she tried to borrow $1 million for operating expenses. State told her she couldn't, so you guys raised taxes $1 million.
Oh, it's tough.
No doubt. It's hard raising taxes. So you raised taxes $1 million, and you reached the constitutional limit.
Close. Yeah.
Yes. So this last $1 million is very precious at this point. Needs to be taken care of, which is now increasing the fund balance through all the residents having their taxes go up. Here's where you went wrong. In 2018, you increased spending $1 million.
What was that?
I don't know. You were doing this budget.
Something important, tell me.
Well, how can anything be important enough to use that last $1 million if you can't get any?
I'm sure there's a lot of important things. Why did somebody's health care costs?
So now you increase the spending $1 million.
But you're not telling me what it was on.
Please, Dan. Please, I waited for you.
Give me a fact then.
I waited for you. It's your budget. It was your budget. Expenditures went up $1 million the next year. Without the ability to raise taxes any longer. The next year you increased again $300,000. So now you're at, you have no additional revenue possible. But here's the thing, what you did in 2019 in your budget. You were going to take $136,000 from the fund balance to use on the budget. You were already starting After raising taxes $1 million, you could not fund the budget. You're starting now to take money back out of the general fund, which led to it depleting years ago. So now you're taking the money out. And in that same budget, 2019, Sarah puts down, she recommends against hiring a police officer. But on December 23rd, you hired 4. December 23rd, 2019, you secretly hired 4. Well, we didn't know about it. We didn't know about it. I mean, where was the meeting that you were hiring 4? So anyways, so there.
So the 4 was to bring it up to the 28 staff, and the extra one is what the police department wanted, that we all refused to give.
Well, so you hired
So let's get
4.
that.
You've hired 4. There's 400,000 plus 136. Plus you gave much greater pay increases than was expected. That fund balance, that 2020 fund balance that we brought up through our work and voting on the budget to over $4 million, you would have had that fund balance down to $1.8 million.
You're absolutely wrong.
You were leading us back.
You're absolutely wrong on that, Mike. In the
All
contracts
right.
show it. The
Let's,
state and healthcare show it.
Let's move on to
that
citizen
we were
participation.
taking a turn. 2019 and 20 are the pivotal years before you guys got
It's
it.
right there.
Those
It's
contracts
Sarah's words, and it's in those budgets.
put the city on track to start realigning itself, to start bringing us back to a point where we probably could lower
Let's
taxes.
move on to citizen participation.
You guys really
I know.
made them.
Yeah.
In 2016.
So when your house burns down, that's not a mess? Because also some facts that
You have what
with that all structural fires, none have been a total loss. A municipality, Mike, a municipality means that people live here because they want services. They want police, they want fire.
Dan,
protection.
let's save it for Friday night at the debate. This is, let's debate politics at the debate, and let's move on to citizen participation.
Well, he's got an audience.
Lies the problem. Everybody's got an opinion. And at the end of the day, you can do what you want with it. Facts are facts. The numbers don't lie. And there's a lot of give and take here. You guys don't know anything about that. You don't know. I negotiated a $1.2 billion budget. 1.2 billion. And health insurance is the driver. And that's where the savings are. And that's where the savings were coming from.
I disagree.
Well, you can disagree, and that's fine, and I'm okay with that. But I know in my heart of hearts that it's accurate.
You look at all the budgets, and there are the numbers right in front of you. Health insurance did not go down. Expenses were going up $300,000 to $500,000 a year because of health insurance. They never went down in those budgets. And you spent that. You raised the tax $1 million, and then wrongfully you spent $1 million. And then you were taken from the general fund. That is all in your budget.
Let's move on to citizen participation,
I'm
please.
fine with that. Let's go.
Please. Please.
And this brings us to citizen participation. Kathy, do we have that?
The first individual is registered as Margaret Haggerty, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is open.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just want to second something that was just said. I had already had it written down that people choose to live here or anywhere for many reasons, not the least of which are the availability and proximity of the police and fire departments. That just kind of seconds what somebody just said. But while we have this city attorney there, might he address the questions and concerns that that we question that might have legal implications, like the internet use, the egregious behavior, cyberbullying, sins of omission, involvements in political election business, charter violations, censoring of correspondence, need to foil everything rather than just get responses, and those kinds of things. I think that would be probably a good use of his time since he's here, or at least things to consider for the next meeting. I don't know if he's aware of the number of times in previous meetings where it's come up where somebody has, maybe even some of the audience too, or the citizens, but have said, can we get a legal opinion on this? And it wasn't allowed. I just think that as a citizen, that concerns me because it seems like some people are just using power in the wrong way to make decisions without really getting a legal opinion when it's asked for, especially since we've already spent an enormous amount of money on legal fees. It seems like we would have more answers than it appears to me that we have. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
The next individual is registered as Penny Sharrow, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. It appears your line is open.
Yeah, I have a bit of a concern when it talks about the skate park. Might as well take it, take you back a ways. I mean, I have no objection. I'm sure you don't care if I do, whether it's located near the pool or not. My concern would be, I don't know what context Andrew was referring to lifeguards being part of the supervision of that park, because the lifeguards are professional rescuers and they have a job to do, and it's a very important job, and it's in the water. It's watching the water. It's not babysitting the skate park. The lifeguards are also responsible for maintaining those bathrooms. I really think there probably is a job out there for somebody to supervise that park and maintain those restrooms if the public's going to use them on a random basis, whether it be for the skate park or just randomly open to everyone, which they are. But I don't think the lifeguards should have to be concerned about the supervision of that skateboard park at all. I think they need to find a way to get some money to hire somebody to do that. And if they need to report to somebody at the pool, then whoever the director may be in the future, down the road, whatever the case may be, that person can radio the director. But I don't think the lifeguards should be concerned with supervision of that park. They've got a job to do when it's on the water. And that's just my opinion, but no one asked that. But I've been told I don't have much say in anything anyhow. So if they consider this drama, then it's drama. Thank you very much.
Penny, that was me, and I guess I more so meant that if there was just bodies down there, if there was an issue, they could more so radio for help. But I know I appreciate your opinion. Thank you.
I didn't know who said it. I thought it was Andrea's voice because she's up
No,
there. But,
it was mine.
That's fine. That's fine, but they have a job to do, and it's not to watch the people at the skate park.
No, I completely agree. I just was saying it more along the lines of if there is behavior issues and they're in an earshot of it, they could always radio for, assistance, whether it's OPD or the recreation director. I didn't really believe that they should have to actually handle any situations themselves.
And if it was me and I was down there, I would certainly handle it for you because I'm more concerned about the kids and the safety of the kids. So I could handle it for you. Okay?
Absolutely, you would. I have no doubts on that, Penny.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nicole. Thanks for talking.
You're
Nobody
welcome.
usually does. Have a good night.
Anyone else, Kathy?
The next individual is registered as Ron Lesbrance, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. Appears your line is open.
Good evening, City Council. As a candidate running for one of the open seats, my one question is, when do the city councilors come together as one? Because we are supposed to be, I'm speaking as if I was one, but I'm not at this point, representatives of the city of Ogdensburg for the best things for the city to happen. And the bickering and the back and forth and all that, I mean, why can't all of that be shoved aside where everyone comes together, you discuss your dislikes, you discuss the positives, concentrate on the positives, and push forward, making the city a great place, where people want to come, where businesses want to thrive, where businesses are enticed to come and infuse our city with jobs and money and tax revenue. When does this happen? That's my question.
Great, Ron, thank you. Good idea.
Kathy,
Any
anyone
answers?
I do not see any other hands raised.
Make a motion for executive.
Okay, we have a need for executive session tonight to discuss medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a person or corporation. And we anticipate there may be action. We'll make a motion to adjourn.
There's no
I'll
action.
second it.
He said there is action. Is that what you said? There is
There may be.
action?
Maybe.
Okay.
There may be.
There may be. So it means we're coming back.
So we don't adjourn to executive. So we don't adjourn.
We don't adjourn to executive session. We just go into executive session.
Been made and second.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly.
Yep.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
approved. I can mute him.
I'll call you back in just a second once we get set up.
How you doing, Scott?
Yeah. Thanks.
Ronnie. Good. A lot of deer in them woods.
Some got one open today.
Did he? Good for him.
You that one great workshop?
Just so
No.
you are all aware, you are
Good.
Your mics are hot, you know.
Oh.
They all know about everybody's hunting tendencies. Well, at least they didn't reveal their secret hunting spot.
Good for Brady Bullet. That's awesome. Do you have the resolution?
I don't, no one gave it to me.
Kathy, is Steve back in?
Yep.
You there? Okay. Let the record reflect that all members of council are still present. And I believe Jelly's we're gonna take some action.
A resolution selecting a preferred developer for the former Diamond National site. Whereas a request for proposals regarding the potential sale of 24 acres of city-owned property located at 1 and 2 Madison Avenue was issued by the city of Ogdensburg on July 7, 2021, with responses due on September 30, 2021. And whereas the city of Ogdensburg has received 2 proposals that have been reviewed by city staff and presented to city council for consideration. And whereas city council finds that it's in its best interest of the public that it select from the proposals which have been submitted that will advance the economic development of the community to the greatest extent, and to authorize the city manager to enter into negotiations with the preferred developer to formulate a proposed written purchase agreement. And whereas any proposed purchase agreement negotiated by the city manager shall not be binding on the city of Ogdensburg until such agreement shall have been approved by the city council pursuant to the provisions of general law section 23(2)B. And whereas the city council has selected the proposal of Blue Water Development LLC as the preferred proposal and provides up to 120 days for both parties to conduct necessary and proper due diligence. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Ogdensburg, New York, that the city manager is authorized to enter into negotiations with Blue Water Development LLC for the purpose of formulating a proposed purchase agreement for the sale of city-owned property generally described above, which proposed agreement shall be subject to the approval by the city council in accordance with the terms and conditions of this resolution.
I so move.
But it says Blue Water Properties LLC. I just want to make sure it's reflected correctly in the resolution.
I noticed he said that incorrect. Blue Water Properties LLC, correct?
Yes.
You have a lot of background noise.
Sorry.
Okay. So, discussion?
Good. I've been waiting a long time to get this property going.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
approved.
At this time, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?